भागवत सेवया भगवती उत्तम श्लोके भक्ति भवति नैष्टिकी. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 2 and Text 22. Rushiruvacha iti avyalīkam pranutaha abjanabha tam abhabhashe vachasa amrutena suparna pakshopari rochamanah prema smita udvikshana vibramat bruhu rushirvacha ityavyalīkam pranutobjanabhas tamabhabhashe vachasamrutena suparna paksho parirochamanah prema smitodvikshana vibramat bruh. Rushiruvacha ityavyalīkam pranutobjanabha tamabhabhashe vachasamrutena suparna paksho parirochamanah prema smitodvikshana vibramat bruh. Pranutobjanabha paksho parirochamanah Rishihi Uvacha. The great sage Maitreya said, Iti, thus, Avyalīkam, sincerely, Pranutaha, having been praised, Abjanabha, Lord Viṣṇu, Tam, to Kardama Muni, Abhabhashe, replied, Vachasa, with words, Amrutena, as sweet as nectar, Suparna, of Garuḍa, Paksha, the shoulders, Upari, upon, Rochamanah, shining, Prema, of affection, Smita, with a smile, Udvikshana, looking, Vibhramat, gracefully moving, Bruhu, eyebrows. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swamy Srila Prabhupada. Translation. Maitreya resumed, sincerely extolled in these words, shining very beautifully on the shoulders of Garuḍa, replied with words as sweet as nectar. His eyebrows moved gracefully as he looked at the sage with a smile full of affection. Please repeat. Maitreya resumed, sincerely extolled in these words, Lord Viṣṇu, shining very beautifully on the shoulders of Garuda, replied with words as sweet as nectar. His eyebrows moved gracefully as he looked at the sage with a smile full of affection. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. The word Vachasamrutena is significant. Whenever the Lord speaks, he speaks from the transcendental world. He does not speak from the material world. Since he is transcendental, his speech is also transcendental, as is his activity. Everything in relation to him is transcendental. The word Amruta refers to one who does not meet with death. The words and activities of the Lord are deathless. Therefore, they are not manufactured of this material world. The sound of this material world and that of the spiritual world are completely different. The sound of the spiritual world is nectarian and eternal, whereas the sound of the material world is hackneyed and subject to end. The sound of the holy name Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Rama Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, everlastingly increases the enthusiasm of the chanter. If one repeats monotonous material words, he will feel exhausted. But if he chants Hare Krishna 24 hours a day, he will never feel exhausted. Rather, he will feel encouraged to continue chanting more and more. When the Lord replied to the sage Kardama, the word Vachasamrutena is specifically mentioned since he spoke from the spiritual world, transcendental world. He replied in transcendental words, and when he spoke, his eyebrows moved with great affection. When a devotee praises the glories of the Lord is very satisfied, and he bestows his transcendental benediction upon the devotee without reservation, because he is always causelessly merciful toward his devotee. Thus the Bhaktivedanta purport. Om ajnanatimidandasya jnananjana shalakaya surunmilitam ena Shri Gurave Namaha. Nama Om Viṣṇupadaya Krishna Preshtaya Bhutale Bhaktivedanta Swamin Nitinamine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvisesha Shunyavadi Paśyatya Deshatarine Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shiva Sadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So here Maitreya Rishi is resuming. He is explaining the interaction between Kardama Muni and the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Viṣṇu. Here Viṣṇu is standing on the shoulders, Suparna Paksha Upari. On the shoulders of Garuda, Lord Viṣṇu is standing, Rochamanaha, is shining beautifully. And then Prema Smita Udvikshana, he is looking at Kardama Muni with affection, great affection, smilingly. So he is standing on the shoulders of Garuda and is looking at the sage who is there in the front offering prayers, and with a affectionate smile. Vibramad Bruhu, his eyebrows are also moving very affectionately. And then Tama Babhashe Vachasamrutena, then the Supreme Personality of Godhead Viṣṇu, he spoke the following words. And those words are termed here as Amrutena, eternal, nectarian. Here Viṣṇu is referred as Abjanabha. So this is the context. why the Lord is very pleased? Because Avyalikam Pranataha. Kardama Muni has offered his prayers very sincerely. Sincerity means there is no duplicity, there is no deceitful motives in the heart. Genuinely, the prayers have come from his heart, and because he has a genuine understanding of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and so he accepted the glories of the Lord from the scriptures as it is, and then here he is directly offering it to the Supreme Lord. So Avyalikam means sincerity. Very sincerely he has done offered his prayers. Now this is a very important point. Whatever service we do, whether it is chanting or any other service, the main ingredient is that one has to be very sincere and he has to be very serious. So sincere means there should not be any lower intentions, material intentions while offering his prayers. One should not be thinking that I am doing all this offerings or glorification of the Supreme Lord, so I will get something back so that I can enjoy in this world which is independent of the Supreme Lord. So if somebody does sincerely, then he will be able to contact the Supreme Lord the way Kardama Muni has contacted here. So Prabhupada is making it very clear that Vachasamrutena, the words that Krishna, the Viṣṇu spoke, they are Amrutena. Amrutena means there is no death. Amruta means deathlessness. So here the words of Viṣṇu or his activities has no death, because Viṣṇu is transcendental. His words, the sound that is emanating from his lotus mouth, his activities are all transcendental. There is no birth and there is no death. In this world, everything takes birth, and so the death is also guaranteed. Anything that has a birth has a death. It could be anything. It could be a construction, it could be a religious path, or it could be any of those things. If they have date of birth, then it is guaranteed that there will be a date of death. But here what Bhagavatam is describing is something which is going to exist eternally or permanently. It has no birth. The way many material things take birth here, it has no birth like that. So Krishna's, that sound that is emanating from his lotus mouth, that is transcendental, it is called spiritual, and it is not made up of anything of this world. It is not a material sound. So Prabhupada explains that there is a gulf of difference between material sound and the spiritual sound. The material sound, it becomes hackneyed, monotonous, and then boring. One feels exhausted. If the sound continues for next 1 hour, they are shifting some cylinders. We will not be able to tolerate this. Very, very exhausting it is. But if there is a nice kirtan, interesting like Prabhupada's dhun, anytime we enter into the temple hall, immediately our mind gets captivated by the sound, the nice sound that is coming. The secret in this spiritual sound, Like Prabhupada is explaining this Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare. He is saying everlastingly increases the enthusiasm of the chanter. So while chanting, we feel exhausted sometimes, or we may feel monotonous only because we don't hear the sound. As soon as we don't hear the sound and there are simultaneous thought processes are going on in the mind, it becomes laborious. It becomes exhausted. So 2-3 contradictory thought processes are going on, and then you are not hearing the sound, then there is a possibility that one feels exhausted. But if somebody keeps aside all other thinking and focuses on hearing the sound, then he will never feel bored or exhausted. It could be a class, or it could be our chanting, or it could be our reading. The key point is that that sound has to enter into our ears. If it is done mechanically, ritualistically, then one may not feel everlasting increase of enthusiasm. So this is the only secret. The sound has to enter the ears and you have to hear with great devotion. So then the enthusiasm increases. The chanter becomes enthusiastic to offer more and more of this glorification to Krishna. Every one mantra when we chant, actually we are glorifying Krishna. We are offering our services to Krishna. Glorification is a service. So actually Viṣṇu or Krishna, they are not dependent on our glorification. They are actually glorifiable, supremely glorifiable personalities. They have all glories. Viṣṇu or Krishna, he has all the glories. His activities are glorious. His form is glorious. The way he appeared in front of Kardama and his affection for him is all glorious. He is naturally a glorious personality. But if a devotee recognizes those glories, so that is for his own benefit. Generally what happens, a living entity is absorbed in his own glory. Very difficult for a conditioned soul to recognize the glories of others. Very, very difficult it is. In his mind, continuously there is a glorification and recognition for his own either ability or his own whatever qualities that he thinks, continuously is absorbed in such glory. Even if the other person exhibits some glorious things, still it is so difficult to recognize that yes, he is better than me, or he has such a nice quality. Very, very difficult. But in spiritual life, when the devotees take up Krishna consciousness and when they start chanting, they learn how to recognize and glorify other Vaishnavas. In fact, a pure devotee is averse to see faults in others. That is pure devotion. He is very averse. He doesn't like to. Jai Radha Govinda Ki Jai. And then he genuinely, here again, avyalikena, very genuinely he has to appreciate or glorify the qualities or attributes in the other Vaishnavas. Not in a joking way or a funny way, or to mimic somebody, or it should not be unrealistic. unrealistic means Prabhu, lotus feet, please give your dust of your lotus feet and all those things. Those sentences are applicable only to a pure devotee. So we should be factual in our glorification, and so the mind is working in order to recognize good qualities in others. It's a work. It takes time. So if somebody sincerely recognizes others' good qualities, then he will advance nicely. Then whereas the Vaishnavas or other devotees are having good qualities, many good qualities are there, but we don't recognize, and we will only point at the faults, then that is known as blasphemy. Blasphemy means you have good qualities, but I don't recognize those. I recognize only apparently the faults in others. So that becomes blasphemy. Particularly, blasphemy means the one who is propagating the glories of the holy name, and if we blaspheme them, that becomes an offense to the holy name. Generally, these offenses and blasphemy are not recognized by the devotee. They are recognized by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Devotees, they don't mind if somebody passes comments or offends or whatever, he goes on. He doesn't recognize. But the Supreme Lord, he will recognize these offenses to his devotees. So that's why we have to be careful to ensure that we don't commit these offenses. This is one more reason why we may feel exhausted while chanting Hare Krishna. One is that we don't listen. The sound doesn't penetrate our heart. And the second issue is that we may commit these offenses, and particularly in our dealings with the Vaishnavas. So this is the second possibility that we may feel exhausted. Sometimes it could be a sheer strength is not there. You feel very tired physically, and there is not sufficient strength. Naturally there is no enthusiasm in the mind. Sometimes it happens like that, very dull and all that. The day starts like that. There is a situation like that. So in order to cross over these offenses or this kind of a lack of strength in chanting Hare Krishna, the Shastra recommends one transcendental process. If we want to improve our chanting, make our chanting free from these difficulties and offenses, the Acharyas, they have recommended chanting of one more mantra, and that is Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shiva Sadi Gaura Bhakta. Then Hare Krishna. If your chanting is going on with great difficulty, you chant once again the Panchatattva mantra. That will give you some strength immediately. Actually, chanting Gaurnitai names, holy names, that will give you the boost, because they are offenseless. The holy names of Gaurnitai has no offenses at all. So you immediately get the strength, and then we can then chant Hare Krishna Mahamantra. So the background feeling while chanting Hare Krishna is that the background, the consciousness is that I am doing this chanting on the order of my spiritual master. He remembers the orders of his spiritual master, and then he knows I am chanting this in order to please my spiritual master. He should be pleased that as I am following all is harder. And then when Prabhupada is pleased, then it is said that Nityananda is pleased, Gauranga is pleased, and ultimately the holy name Radha Krishna Shabda Rupa, they are pleased. So this background consciousness, changing this background consciousness, that is nothing but Krishna conscious process. When Prabhupada says one has to be Krishna conscious, that means in the background Krishna is always there. Like Arjuna was given the instruction in Bhagavad Gita, Tasma sarveshu kaleshu ma manusmara yudhyacha. Krishna is giving an interesting advice here. He is saying, you fight, but he is saying, ma manusmara, you also think of me. Now when he has to fight with others and is aiming an arrow at somebody else, his focus is on the arrow and on the enemy. But Krishna is saying, ma manusmara, you think of me also, and then you shoot also. And you have to keep an eye on the enemy. How is it possible? Actually, that anusmara has to become part of your consciousness. The background, always the background is existing. It is always existing. For every activity there is a background. And that background consciousness, if it becomes Krishna conscious, then automatically your every activity is spiritualized. Now what is that background consciousness everywhere? That Krishna is the Supreme Lord, everything belongs to Him, everything has to be used for His pleasure, everything must be for His pleasure. This is the kind of a consciousness. Every time it has to be there. So when we advise somebody about Krishna consciousness, initially we need not have to tell them that to change his activities, to change his duties. No need. What has to change is the background consciousness with which he is doing his duties. Now everybody does duties for what? He wants to get some results and enjoy those results for him, for his own pleasure. But if you can change that background consciousness to, now these results are meant for Krishna and for his satisfaction you have to use it, job is done. That is Krishna consciousness. So the background consciousness has to change. That is called Krishna. So every activity should be with Krishna consciousness. Devotional service should be done with Krishna consciousness. Favorable Krishna consciousness. So that is the secret here. So to change the consciousness, our consciousness, then we have to, the only way to change the consciousness is to hear attentively spiritual sound. Most important spiritual sound that we all have to hear is the sound that is emanating from the mouth of a pure devotee, the spiritual master. In Bhagavatam, it is explained that when a pure devotee speaks, the sound that emanates from his mouth, is from his lotus mouth, is so powerful that it carries the aroma of the saffron dust particles on the lotus feet of Viṣṇu, lotus feet of Krishna. The lotus feet of Krishna is always adorned with, beautifully strewn saffron dust particles. So when a pure devotee speaks, his sound carries the aroma of those dust particles, because he is always absorbed in meditating on the lotus feet of the Lord. So when that sound, when that powerful sound comes and hits the ears of a sleeping conditioned soul, all of a sudden he will wake up. It's like somebody is sleeping. If somebody powerfully produces some sound, he wakes up. It is like that. Everybody in this world has forgotten his relationship with Krishna and is leading a life of a dreamy life. In the dream, we forget about our real identity. So similarly, in this world, we forgotten our real identity, that I am a simple, a submissive devotee of Krishna, that we have forgotten. And so, a pure devotee comes here, and when he speaks, that sound is not material sound. That sound is spiritually enriched sound. That powerful sound has the potency to wake us up. Jiv jago, jiv jago. It can happen automatically. Otherwise, by our own endeavor, mental struggles, calculations, we will not be able to change ourselves. Simply by intellectual exercises, we will not be able to adjust our minds and change ourselves. The only change that is possible is when you hear submissively to a pure devotee's either writings, this is also recording, his voice is recorded in these books, or directly from his tapes, from his audio file, we can hear his sound. Now this is the most important point, why we should listen to Prabhupada's lectures. Why we should be attached to hearing from his books, because that has a different potency. Directly the Lord's mercy is inbuilt into that sound. It's a spiritual sound. Like an American comes here and talks in India, his sound that he produces will not become Indian. That is still American sound only. The accent, the sound, everything is American only. Similarly, a pure devotee who descends from spiritual world, whatever he speaks, that's always from the transcendental world. That is a spiritual sound. His sound is not of this material world. So that's why it is extremely important. The more we want to progress in spiritual life, more we have to be addicted to reading Prabhupada books and hearing his lectures, hearing his sound. That sound will wake us up. Wherever we have difficulties, and the Guru will slash those difficulties in a particular lecture. Wherever we have some illusions catching on to us, a particular line, paragraph in Prabhupada's lecture or in his books will slash those illusions. This is the opportunity. If we want to become perfect, here is the easy process. Just give submissive oral reception to Srila Prabhupada's teachings, oral reception to his Vani, his audio, very, very powerful. And this process is not concocted by us. This process is approved by Lord Chaitanya. He says, Stane stita shrutikatam tanuvan manobhi. By your mind, by your words, by your body, give oral reception to this Shrutigatam is oral reception to the sound that is emanating from the lotus mouth of a spiritual master. Prabhupada, his presence is a blessing of Krishna. Take that blessing fully. Prabhupada's presence, accepting him as a spiritual master, that itself is the biggest grace that we have received from Krishna, biggest mercy. Now, a sincere devotee, he takes advantage of his presence in Vani. Prabhupada is present in his Vani, so he takes advantage of that presence and then he will perfect his life. This is the secret. We'll stop here. Any questions?
Hearing Prabhupada's Vani directly, is it more potent than reading from his books?
Actually, books are also based on his Vani only. He dictated into the dictaphones, which was coded into a language So this is a recorded chant. Books are recorded chanting. And when we hear, when you read, you are actually hearing that sound. So it is all same. Transcendentally, they're all same. But there is a special place for hearing the sound, original sound that came from Prabhupada's the lotus mouth. That's why Prabhupada insisted on recording his voice. 2000 lectures are there, 2000 plus lectures. There's so much to listen. Whenever you find some time, go on hearing his sound. And at the same time, you read his books, because what happens, Prabhupada gave lectures on many verses, but they may not be in continuous number. So we have to read his books. Reading books means systematic reading from first page to last page without jumping here and there. This is called reading. So we have to continue systematic reading, but at the same time we should be eager to hear his voice. That is very, very powerful for our consciousness. And that is amrutena, vachasamrutena. It is nectarian and it is deathless. Whatever he spoke will remain eternally. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai.
శ్రీకృష్ణుణ్ణి చేరుకోవడానికి, కృష్ణ భక్తిని అందరికీ అందించటానికి బృందావనం వైపు ఉరకలేస్తున్న యమునోత్రి. విష్ణుపాదమే తన పుట్టినిల్లుగా కైలాసం చేరుకోవడానికి పరుగులు తీస్తున్న గంగోత్రి. కురుక్షేత్ర ఘోర హత్యా పాపం శంకరుణ్ణి శాంతపరచడం లక్ష్యంగా పాండవులు నిర్మించిన కేదార్నాథ్. సమస్త సాధు పుంగవులకు, ఋషులకు, ఆధ్యాత్మిక సాధనకు స్ఫూర్తినిచ్చే నరనారాయణులను నడయాడిన ప్రదేశం బద్రీనాథ్.
హరే కృష్ణ గోల్డెన్ టెంపుల్ వారి మరో అపురూప కానుక హరే కృష్ణవాణి ఆధ్యాత్మిక మాసపత్రిక. ఇప్పుడు మొబైల్ యాప్ ద్వారా కూడా సులభంగా పత్రికలు చదువుకునే సౌకర్యం, వార్షిక సభ్యత్వం, భగవద్గీత, భాగవత ప్రవచనాలు, స్ఫూర్తి సందేశాలు, ఇంకా మరెన్నో సదుపాయాలతో హరే కృష్ణవాణి మొబైల్ యాప్ నేడే డౌన్లోడ్ చేసుకోండి. మరిన్ని వివరాల కోసం కాల్ చేయండి 9133107700.